Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time it is where you're listening to us right now. I'm BJ Stories, and today we have a creative non-fiction story centered around paranoia and coming of age. This story was found on Reedsy, Reedsy, not sponsored. On Reedsy, you can find a bunch of short stories encompassing various topics, as well as editors, ghostwriters, and a lot of things related to text. So, without any further ado, wait, one more ado. This story was written by Liv Chocolate, that's her name on Reedsy, and the name is Careful, You'll Slip, Fall, and Die on Those Slippery Slopes. Alright, now, without any further ado, let's jump into it. Brief warning, this story references sexual assault, kidnapping, and murder. Very lightly though. It doesn't focus on them very much or for very long. The first time I crossed a street by myself, as in without one or both of my parents present, I was 17. My parents warned me that the outside world was dangerous and that if something were to happen to me, I wouldn't know what to do. According to my parents, kidnappers, murderers, and kidnapper-murderers lurked on every corner of our small suburban town, where statistically, my chances of becoming the victim of a violent crime were less than my chances of being allowed to cross the street by myself, or more importantly, being allowed to sleep over at Taylor's house. What if something bad happens? My dad argued when I asked why I couldn't spend the night. My mom agreed with him. She lives too far away. Defeated, I looked out the window at Taylor's house across the street. I imagined what it'd be like to paint your best friend's toenails mystic purple at midnight, while telling her your deepest, darkest secret. This, I confessed between coats of paint, is my first time over at a friend's house. I stopped receiving birthday party invitations after around the 4th grade. I blamed it on the fact that I didn't understand basic social dynamics, but more on the fact that I became known as the girl who would bring her dad to your birthday party. The few parties I did attend, my dad stood next to me at all times, arms crossed, warning me of all the ways you could accidentally die or hurt yourself at a kid's birthday party. There was a cake you could choke on, there were the patio steps you would fall on and crack your head on. One year at my friend David's birthday party, when everyone ran upstairs to see his Pokeball, I followed, ecstatic. But something stopped me. I didn't know what it was until I turned around and found my dad pulling me back, as if stopping me from walking off a cliff. Stay here, he warned, and we sat on David's family's ugly floral couch, listening to my friends upstairs opening and closing the plastic Pokemon ball. I pleaded with my dad to let me join them. Do you know what a child molester is? He asked me. As I heard David's faint voice upstairs explaining to everyone the mechanisms of his toy, my dad explained to me that there are sick people in the world, very sick people who like to put their hands in your pants and then cut up your body parts into tiny little pieces that fit in a garbage can. There could be one hiding upstairs, he told me, a creepy uncle or something. I imagined my friends being chopped up into bite-sized pieces that could fit and be hidden inside David's Pokemon ball. I wondered if we should rescue them, bring them down to the safety of the ugly floral couch. But just as fast as I'd had the thought, everyone came down, all in one piece, completely intact and untouched. From there, I was permitted to take approximately 5 stiff and awkward supervised jumps in the Jolly Jumper outside before my dad said it was time to go. By the time I reached my preteens, I had finally negotiated myself the privilege of a playdate. I'd never been on a playdate before, that is, one that didn't take place in my own home under my parents' supervision. At the time, my parents' stipulations were that I could only go to Taylor's house across the street, I had to bring a walkie-talkie with me in case I needed help, I had to be escorted across the street to her house, no walking there or back alone, I could get run over and die, I had to stay inside the house at all times, no playing in the front or backyard, and most importantly, no sleeping over. The day of my first playdate, my mom coached me on how to behave as she took me across the street. Say please, say thank you, and tell them you're not allowed to go outside. I promised. Then just like that, my mom left me at the door, a momentary illusion of freedom. Behind me, she was still standing across the street, monitoring my every move as I reached to ring the doorbell. Taylor's mom answered. "Hello, Mrs. Jones," I said to her. "I thank you for having me over at your home. I will not be allowed to go outside. I have to stay inside at all times." She let out a WTF laugh. Okay, come in." I stepped inside. I still remember the feeling of the plush carpet under my shoes. That day, for what was maybe only 1 or 2 hours, Taylor and I played Barbie's Horse Adventures Wild Horse Rescue on our PS2. I still remember the feeling of the plastic buttons under my fingers, helping Barbie locate her missing horses. Horses who'd gone missing the same way my parents claimed I'd go missing if I ever left their sight. Before this, I'd never been on my own before, aside from when I was at school or running through the sprinklers, supervised through the window, in our fenced-in backyard. Up until that point in my life, playing Barbie's Horse Adventures Wild Horse Rescue, an entire 20 feet away from my home, was the most exhilarating experience I'd ever had. We could have stared at our living room wall and it still would have been just as exhilarating to me. But eventually I wanted more. Playdates across the street weren't enough. I was almost in high school and I wanted a sleepover. I negotiated with my parents, though my first several attempts failed. I made PowerPoints, I used the ethos pathos logos thing I learned about in language arts. None of it worked. Then one day I got a yes. I didn't know how or why, all that mattered was I got a yes. I thought about that sleepover every second of every day in the week leading up to it. I packed my cat pajamas in my pink suitcase a week in advance. Then the night of the sleepover, things got even better for me. My dad had good news. "What's the good news?" I asked, pink suitcase in hand. "We're going to the movies tonight. We're going to see Chicken Little." In my house, going to the movies was like dining out, a rarity reserved only for the most special of occasions. "So," my dad said, "you need to call your friend and tell her maybe another time." I was upset, but the thought of going to the movies on an otherwise unofficial holiday kept me from screaming. "Okay," I said. I called Taylor. "Sorry, I'm going to the movies tonight. Another time." Then I hung up, and as I went to put my suitcase away, my dad had more news. "We're not actually going to the movies," he told me. "Then where are we going?" I asked. "Nowhere." I remember staring at a barbecue sauce bottle on the kitchen table that night as my parents listed the reasons I couldn't sleep over at Taylor's. "You might play truth or dare, and your friend will dare you to jump in her pool, and knowing you, you'll do it, drown, and die. Her parents will forget to lock the door. How do we know if her parents are the type of people who lock their doors at night? If the doors are unlocked, someone will come inside at night when you're sleeping and take you. We'll never see you again. If something bad were to happen to you, you wouldn't know how to handle it." Screaming and crying, refusing to eat my now cold plate of dinner, I demanded more reasons. But my mom stopped my dad from going on. "We already gave her our reasons," she told him. "She should understand by now why it's a bad idea." Things improved over the years, and eventually I gained more freedom. By the time I was 17, I had crossed the street, been on a playdate, attended a slumber party, signed up for Neopets on the condition that I put my gender as male, gone to a public place other than school without supervision. Then at 17, I applied to college. I was on the phone with my friend Bridget one night when my dad did I hang up and come to the kitchen. I hung up and came out, sat at the same table we'd sat at when they listed their anti-slumber party reasons. "We need to talk about college," my dad said, angry. My mom sitting at the table, upset. "Why are you applying to faraway colleges? What if something bad happens to you? What if you have an accident or an emergency? What are you going to do if we're not there to help you? Maybe you can go to the local community college and your mom can drive you there," he added. I hadn't been allowed to drive alone yet. I had my license, but I wasn't allowed to use it. After many more negotiations, we settled on a school, not too far away, but also not too close to home. I wasn't even allowed to live on campus. But my first year of college, something strange happened. My parents' paranoid voice chattered in my head most days, reminding me that I didn't know how to do anything on my own. "Do you know how to use an ATM?" I asked my roommate one day. "Or how to get to class?" "I don't know. I actually don't know how." Okay guys, that's it for this first story for the channel. I'm sorry if it's a little bit messy. There were some vehicles driving in the background. My microphone isn't the best. I just had this idea for a channel, and I wanted to try it. So, anyway, it's not to. I'll explain all of that in another video maybe. But thank you very much for listening. Let me know what you think